The farmhouse door slammed shut behind her. The bolt slid home with a sound colder than the wind. Evelyn Hart stood in the roaring blizzard, a sharp pain shooting through her back as the baby inside her decided tonight was the night. Her husband's family had waited for this moment. They waited until she was weak and in labor, unable to defend herself. "You were never his wife in God's eyes," his mother had said. "That child is not our blood." Then they threw her into the storm to die. Evelyn tried to walk, but her thin dress was already frozen stiff. They had taken everything from her. Her coat, the baby's quilt, everything. She collapsed under a cottonwood tree as the contractions tore through her body. The wind swallowed her screams. She was going to die out here. Her baby was going to die. And then she felt a strong kick from inside her, a little life reminding her it was still there. So she screamed one more time into the storm. And somewhere in that frozen darkness, a man named Cole Riker heard her. What happened next would change both their lives forever. This story will teach you that the best lives don't start with perfect beginnings, that love isn't always a lightning strike. Sometimes it's a stranger who decides to stop when anyone else would have kept going. And that being thrown into a storm doesn't have to decide how your story ends. If you've ever felt like the world was trying to break you, this story is your proof that kindness can find you in the darkest moments. Drop a comment and tell me, has a stranger ever changed your life? Your likes and shares help women everywhere find stories that remind them they deserve to be saved. Subscribe so you never miss a story that speaks to your soul. The storm hit the prairie like a hammer, a wall of white that erased the whole world. The wind howled and the snow flew so hard you could not see your own hand in front of your face. It was the kind of storm that freezes a man solid in minutes. And that is the storm they threw Evelyn Hart into. The farmhouse door slammed shut behind her, the sound of the bolt sliding home feeling colder than the wind. Evelyn stood in the roaring darkness, a sharp pain shooting through her back as the baby inside her made its presence known. She looked back at the warm light in the window, but it was already a world away. "Please," she breathed, but the wind just snatched the word away. Another wave of pain hit her, so strong it buckled her knees and forced her into the snow. She held her swollen belly, shaking as the contraction finally passed. When she looked up again, the house was almost gone, swallowed by the snow. Her husband Thomas's family had waited for this moment. They waited until she was weak and in labor, unable to defend herself. His mother had stood there, her face hard as stone. "You are not his widow," she said, her voice like ice. "You were never his wife in God's eyes. That child is not our blood, and you will get nothing from us." Evelyn tried to tell them that she and Thomas were legally married, that the baby was his. But another contraction stole her breath, and Thomas's brother grabbed her arm. He was a big man, and he was angry. He dragged her out and threw her into the snow before she could even get a scream out. Now, she was all alone. She tried to walk, but her thin dress was already frozen stiff. They had taken everything from her after Thomas died 3 months earlier. Her coat, the baby's quilt, everything. All she had left was the dress she was wearing and the child she was carrying. And it felt like both were about to be buried under 6 feet of snow. She thought she was on the road, but every landmark was gone. The world was just a swirl of white wind and biting cold. And then the pain came again, stronger this time. It dropped her to her knees, and the tears on her face turned to ice. It felt like a giant hand was squeezing her spine, and a new kind of fear, sharp and real, cut through her. The baby was coming. Not here, not like this. But her body had a mind of its own. When the pain eased, she tried to get up, but her legs gave out. She started to crawl, her hands sinking deep into the snow. She only made it a few yards before she collapsed, curling up to protect her belly. A strange calm washed over her. She was going to die out here. She was so tired of being scared, tired of being cold, and tired of fighting. It seemed so much easier to just close her eyes and let the snow do its work. But then she felt a strong kick from inside her, a little life reminding her it was still there, and a fire lit inside Evelyn's heart. No, she would not let them win. She would not let Thomas's cruel family take her baby's life. If she was going to die, she was going to die fighting. She pushed herself back onto her hands and knees. Through the blinding snow, she saw a dark shape. It looked like a big tree. Shelter. She crawled toward it, one painful inch at a time. The contractions were coming one right after the other now, with no time to rest in between. She finally reached the massive cottonwood tree and leaned against its wide trunk, which blocked some of the terrible wind. It was not much, but it was something. She pulled her knees up and wrapped her arms around herself, trying to breathe through the next wave of pain. It was the worst one yet, and a scream tore from her throat, raw and full of desperation. The wind swallowed the sound, but she screamed again, and again. It was all she could do. It was the only hope she had left. Even though she was sure nobody could hear her, she screamed into the storm. Cole Riker was a rancher who knew the land and the sky. He had known a mean storm was coming all day. He had spent hours moving his cattle to safer ground and tying down anything that could blow away. By the time the snow really started coming down, he was 5 miles from his house. He was pushing his horse through drifts that were already up to its knees. He should have headed home earlier, but a fence was down, and he knew his cattle would wander off into a canyon if he did not fix it. So he worked with numb fingers until the job was done and the sky was getting dark. Now the storm was making him pay for that choice. His horse was strong, but it was getting tired. Cole could feel the animal struggling to breathe, but stopping meant freezing to death. So he kept pushing on, picturing his warm house, the wood stove, and a hot cup of coffee. He was less than a mile away now. He just had to keep moving through the cold that had sunk deep into his bones. His hands and feet were completely numb, but he knew how to ignore it. He knew how to survive. He was almost home. Soon he would be warm, he would be safe, he would be sipping something hot. Then a noise cut through the howling wind. Cole stopped his horse instantly. He listened hard, trying to hear past the storm. He heard it again. It was faint, but it was a woman's scream. A sound of pure terror. He did not hesitate. He turned his tired horse and pushed it into the deep snow toward the sound. The animal fought him for a second, but Cole urged it forward. The scream came again, a little closer this time. His heart pounded in his chest. Nobody should be out in this weather. He saw the dark shape of the big cottonwood tree, and then he saw a small figure huddled at its base. Cole jumped from his horse before it even stopped, his boots sinking into the snow as he rushed forward. He fell to his knees beside the woman, and his own breath caught in his throat. The word caught in his throat. It was a young woman, soaked to the bone and shaken so hard it looked like she was having a fit. Her lips had a blue tint, her skin was ghost white, and her eyes were barely open. And dear Lord, her belly. She was heavy with child, that thin dress stuck to her like a second skin. Her eyes flew open and met his, just wild with pain and terror. A broken sound came from her lips as her whole body went stiff. A scream tore out of her that chilled him clear to the bone. She was in labor. For a second, Cole's mind went clear empty from the shock. Then 20 years of ranching kicked in, the kind of know-how that comes from delivering calves and foals all by your lonesome. He knew that standing still gets things killed. He tore off his coat, wrapped it around her, then scooped her up in one smooth move. She was too light, way too light for a woman so far along. She just curled into him like a lost child, trembling so bad he could feel it right through his shirt. "I got you," he said, his voice rough and loud to be heard over the wind. "You just hang on, I got you." She did not answer. Her eyes were shut again, her face buried in his shoulder. She was fighting for every breath. Another contraction seized her, and she cried out into his coat, her hands grabbing a fistful of his shirt. Cole turned back to his horse, his mind racing. Home was still a good mile away, probably more in this blizzard. She would never make it. The baby would not either. He needed shelter, and he needed it now. Then it hit him. The old trapper's cabin. It was just a quarter-mile north, hidden in some pines. Rough as a cob, but it was 4 walls and a roof. It would have to do. He laid her gently over the saddle, one hand holding her steady, and took the reins in the other. The horse protested the extra weight and the smell of fear, but Cole's firm voice settled him. They pushed on, the snow getting deeper with every single step. The wind fought them, and the cold tried to suck the life right out of them. But Cole was born in these mountains. He knew how to fight back when the land got mean. He was not about to let some storm win today. He found the cabin more by feel than by sight, a dark shape appearing through the white like a prayer answered. Cole kicked the door open and carried the woman inside, laying her down on the dirt floor by the cold fireplace. The place was freezing, but it was out of the wind. He worked fast, his hands moving on pure instinct. He grabbed his saddlebags, got out his flint and steel, and had a fire snapping in less than a minute. He fed the flames until they roared, pushing back the cold and dark. Then he turned to the woman. She was curled up, her arms wrapped around that big belly, shaking from pain and cold. Her dress was frozen stiff in places. Cole covered her with a saddle blanket, then another, and then his coat. He had to get her warm and fast, but he could see the contractions coming quicker now, her body locking up every few minutes. That baby was coming, ready or not. A sick feeling settled in Cole's gut. He was about to deliver a baby with nothing but firelight and what he knew from livestock. He had pulled calves in blizzards and helped mares too weak to push, but he had never, not once, delivered a human baby. He did not know if what he knew would help, or if he might just end up killing them both. But there was not a choice. No help was coming. It was just him, her, and the storm. Cole knelt down beside her. "Ma'am," he said, his voice steady even as his heart hammered in his chest. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open. They were brown, but clouded over with pain. She looked at him like she could not rightly tell if he was real. "You're in labor," he said, stating the plain truth. "That baby is on its way. I'm going to help you, but you got to stay with me. You hear?" She did not speak, just stared with those scared eyes. Another wave of pain hit her, and she screamed, arching her back. Cole took her hands in his. "Breathe," he said loud and clear. "Just breathe through it. It will pass." He could see her trying, fighting for air. When the contraction finally let go, she fell back, sobbing. "Good job," Cole said, still holding her hands. "You did real good. What is your name?" "Evelyn," she gasped, her voice just a whisper. "Evelyn Hart." "I am Cole Riker. You are going to be okay, Evelyn. Both you and the baby. I give you my word." It was a fool's promise, one he had no right to make. But he said it because she needed to hear it. Sometimes hope is all a person has. He let go of her hands and went to melt some snow in his cup by the fire. He needed hot water, clean rags, something to cut the cord. His knife and a spare shirt from his saddlebags would have to be enough. When he looked back, her eyes were on him, a little clearer now. "They threw me out," she whispered. "His family. Thomas died. They said I was not really his wife. They put me out in the storm." Her voice broke, and fresh tears ran down her face. A cold anger settled deep in Cole's chest. He had seen his share of ugly in the world. But this was something else. This was just plain evil. "Well, they are not here now," he said, his voice low and hard. "And they will not ever touch you or your baby again. You have my word on that." Evelyn looked at him, really looked at him this time. He saw something change in her face. It was not trust, not yet. But it was the start of it. Then her face twisted in pain again, and there was no more time for talk. Cole rolled up his sleeves. He had seen animals birth more times than he could count. He knew the signs, knew what to watch for, and knew what could go wrong. He knew when to wait and when to jump in. But animals do not scream like Evelyn was screaming. They do not look at you with that same mix of terror and desperation. They do not make you feel like you are holding two lives in your bare hands, and one wrong move could drop them both. "You are doing great," he told her, keeping his voice calm while his own heart was pounding. "Just keep breathing. This little one is eager to meet you." Evelyn gasped and nodded, her hands clutching the blankets. The contractions came one right after the other, each one stronger than the last. Time just melted away. There was only the roar of the fire, the howl of the wind, and Evelyn's fight for every breath. Much. Yet something was terribly wrong. Evelyn was freezing and spent, her strength leaving her with each wave of pain. Cole's voice was steady. "You can do this. You have more strength than you know. Give me one more push." Evelyn cried, her voice breaking. "I cannot. I have nothing left." "Yes, you can," Cole insisted. He moved to her side, his hand on her shoulder, his gaze firm. "You are strong enough to walk through a blizzard carrying a child. You are strong enough for this. Now push." And she did. She pushed with the last bit of her will, a scream tearing from her throat. Then Cole saw it. The baby's head, covered in dark hair, appeared in the firelight. "That is it," he said, his voice low. "That is it, Evelyn. Do it again. Just one more." Evelyn pushed again, and the baby came free into Cole's waiting hands. He was a small, perfect boy. For a long, awful moment, the infant was silent and still. Then he took a tiny gasp for air and let out a weak cry. It was the finest sound. It was the Cole had ever heard in his life. He gave a short, breathless laugh that was part relief and part wonder. He took his extra shirt and cleaned the baby boy, wrapping him tightly in the dry cloth. The cord was still attached, so Cole took out his knife. He heated the blade in the fire until it was glowing hot, then sliced the cord in a single clean motion. He tied it off with a bit of rope. His hands were starting to tremble as the weight of the moment caught up to him. He turned and gently placed the baby into Evelyn's arms. She looked down at her son, tears streaming down her face. Her shaking hands touched his little fingers and his dark hair. She traced the shape of his perfect face. "He is alive," she whispered. "He is alive." Cole's voice was thick with emotion. "He is alive. And so are you." Evelyn looked up at him. For the first time since he found her, she gave him a true smile. It was weak and tired, but it was real. "Thank you," she said softly. "Thank you." Cole just nodded, unable to speak. He turned to the fire and added more wood. He started melting, more snow to make water. His heart was still hammering in his chest. He felt empty and raw, like he had survived something that had changed him forever. Behind him, he could hear Evelyn whispering to her new son. The storm continued to howl outside the small cabin, but inside, by the warm fire, a new life had started. And Cole Riker, a simple rancher who understood cattle and horses, had done something extraordinary. He had heard a scream for help and had refused to ignore it. He had chosen to act when it would have been easier to ride away. In saving 2 lives, he had started a new story that neither of them could possibly imagine. The storm did not end until morning. By then, Cole had learned more about strength than 20 years of ranching had taught him. He kept the fire going all through the long night. Evelyn slept when she could, her baby held close against her chest. Cole checked on them every hour, watching them breathe, making certain the cold stayed outside. When the first pale light appeared, the wind had finally calmed down. Cole stood in the doorway and looked out at a world made new and strange. The snow had buried everything in deep drifts, hiding all the familiar trails. The sky was still a heavy gray, a sign that more bad weather was coming. Behind him, the baby made a small noise. Cole turned and saw Evelyn was awake. Her eyes were clear, and she watched him with a look he could not understand. "How are you feeling?" he asked her. "Like a horse ran me over," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Then I was frozen, and then I was brought back from the dead." She looked down at her baby, her hand resting gently on his head. "But we are alive." "You need food and water," Cole told her. He gave her his canteen. "I can take us to my ranch, but we must wait for the snow to settle. Another storm like last night, and we would not make it 100 yards. Evelyn took the canteen and drank. When she was done, her eyes were full of a fierce light, even through her exhaustion. "I can ride. I will do whatever it takes." Cole knew she was telling the truth. He had seen her strength during the birth. He had seen her refuse to give up. But the facts were simple. She had just had a baby in a freezing cabin. She was weak, even if she would not say it. "We will wait until noon," he said. "That will give the weather a chance to clear. It will also give you time to rest." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a piece of dried beef and some hard bread. "It is not much, but it will help." She took the food and ate slowly while watching her baby. Cole looked at her, seeing details he had missed in the chaos. She was young, maybe in her early 20s. Her dark hair was tangled around a face that showed too much sadness for her age. Her hands were rough from hard work. She was far too thin. The cotton dress she wore was torn and stained. She had no coat and no proper shoes. She was not prepared for a blizzard at all. "They threw me out," she had told him. "His family." A cold anger grew inside Cole's chest. He had known men like that before. Men who cared more for their pride than for doing the right thing. Men who would send a pregnant woman out to die in a storm. "The baby should have a name," Cole said, changing the subject. Evelyn looked down at her son with love. "Samuel," she said, "for my father." She paused for a moment. "Samuel Hart. But the Harts will say he has no right to that name." "The Harts are not here," Cole said simply. "They do not get a vote. You are his mother. You are the one who names him." He saw a change in Evelyn's face. A wall she had built around herself seemed to crack. "Why did you help me?" she asked. "You do not know me. You could have just kept riding." Cole thought for a moment. The truth was simple. He heard a scream. He saw a person in trouble. He could not have ridden away even if someone had held a gun to his head. It was not about being a hero. It was just what a person was supposed to do. "I could not leave you out there," he said at last. "I would not have been able to live with myself." Evelyn looked at him with those dark, serious eyes. "Most men would have." "Then most men are cowards," he said. She almost smiled then, but the moment passed and worry returned to her face. "Your ranch," she said. "Your family will be worried." "I have no family," Cole told her. "Just me and my housekeeper, Mabel Crow. She is used to me being late when the weather turns bad. She will complain, but she will not be surprised." "No wife?" Evelyn asked. "No." The word was simple and complete. Evelyn nodded slowly, thinking about this new piece of information. She moved a little, and a flash of pain crossed her face. The baby stirred and started to make small, hungry sounds. "He is hungry," Evelyn said, a bit of panic in her voice. "I do not know what to do." "It is all right," Cole said, quickly. "Your body will know what to do. Just let him try." He turned away to give her some privacy. He checked on his horse and got ready for the difficult ride ahead. Behind him, he heard Evelyn whispering to Samuel. He heard the baby's noises turn to quiet feeding. He felt something inside him relax. They were going to be fine. He would see to it. By noon, the sky was a lighter gray, and the snow had stopped. Cole helped Evelyn onto his horse, placing Samuel securely against her chest. He had given her his coat and made a sling from a blanket to keep the baby safe. It would have to work. He led the horse by hand, making a path through snow that was sometimes as high as his waist. The cold was sharp, but he ignored it. He focused only on finding a safe way home. Evelyn never complained, even though he could see she was swaying with tiredness. He could feel her arms tighten around little Samuel every time the horse took a bad step. It took them 3 long hours to make a ride that should have been 40 minutes. By the time he saw the ranch, the house and barn looking like a mirage in all that white, Cole's legs were shaking and his lungs were raw from the cold. But they had made it. They were home. The front door flew open before they even got to the porch. Mabel Crow came bustling out into the snow, her gray hair coming loose from its bun, her face a mix of mad and relieved. "Cole Riker, you stubborn fool. I was about to think you had frozen solid up on that ridge." She stopped dead when she saw Evelyn on the horse, her eyes wide as saucers. "What in heaven's name? Is that a woman? Is she hurt?" "She needs help, Mabel," Cole said, his voice hoarse. "Get the guest room warm. Hot water, clean sheets, and whatever food you can rustle up fast." Mabel, bless her heart, did not ask another question. She just turned and hurried back inside, already talking to herself about what needed doing. Cole helped Evelyn down. The horse helped keep her on her feet. He practically carried her up onto the porch and through the front door. The blast of warm air felt like a slap, making his frozen skin burn. He got Evelyn to the guest room just as Mabel bustled in with quilts and hot water. The old woman saw Evelyn and the tiny bundle she was holding, and her whole face changed. The hardness melted away, replaced by a kindness Cole had only seen a handful of times in the 15 years Mabel had worked for him. "Oh, you poor dear," Mabel whispered, reaching for the child. "Let me take that little fella so you can get warm." Evelyn clutched Samuel tighter. Cole put a hand on Mabel's arm. "This is Mabel Crow," he told Evelyn. "She's tougher than a $2 steak, but you won't find anyone more loyal. You can trust her." Something in his voice must have reached her, because Evelyn finally let Mabel take the baby. Mabel's weathered hands were surprisingly gentle as she checked over the little boy. "Born last night?" she asked without looking up. "In the old trapper's cabin," Cole answered, "during the storm." Mabel stopped for just a second. She pressed her lips into a thin line. "Well, it's a blessing you're both still with us," she said, then cut her eyes to Cole. "Now get out of here. Let me take care of her." Cole didn't put up a fight. He closed the door and stood in the hall, listening to Mabel's soft voice. His whole body ached with cold and exhaustion. He knew he had 100 chores waiting, but he needed a moment. He needed to let it sink in that they had made it. They were safe. The worst, he figured, was over. The next 2 days were a quiet blur. Evelyn spent most of her time sleeping in the guest room. Mabel brought her soup and tea, fussing over her like a mother hen. Samuel slept and ate and cried, and the sound of a baby in the house felt strange but right. Cole buried himself in ranch work, but he found his boots leading him toward the guest room more than he'd admit. He told himself he was just checking the firewood. The truth was, he couldn't get Evelyn's face out of his mind, or the sound of her baby's first cry. He couldn't shake the feeling of holding that new life, refusing to let go. On the 3rd day, Cole was having his breakfast when Evelyn appeared in the kitchen doorway. She wore one of Mabel's old dresses, and her hair was braided back. There was some color in her cheeks now. Samuel was asleep in her arms. "You're up and about," Cole said, putting his coffee down. "I wanted to thank you," she said, sitting across from him. "For what you did, for saving us. I don't have the words. You don't owe me any thanks." "I owe you everything," she insisted. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were full of emotion. "You could have just ridden on by. You gave us shelter. You gave us safety. I will never forget it." Cole shifted in his seat, not comfortable with so much gratitude. "What are your plans now?" he asked, changing the subject. "You got family somewhere?" Evelyn's face hardened. "No," she said. "My folks died when I was 16. Thomas was all I had. When he passed, his family made it plain I wasn't welcome. I've got nowhere to go. What about the law? If you were married, they can't just kick you out. They burned the marriage license, Evelyn said, her voice flat. Thomas and I were married in town. He kept the papers at the farm. After he died, his mother told me they were gone. Said there was no proof we were ever married. Said I was just some charity case he'd brought home. She shook her head. The Harts have money and friends in high places. Who's going to believe my word against theirs? Cole felt a cold anger rise in him. They stole your husband's land and threw you out with a newborn? That's about the size of it. And the sheriff? Evelyn let out a bitter little laugh. The sheriff is James Hart's best friend. The judge is his cousin. I learned fast that justice in this county isn't for folks like me. She looked down at Samuel. All I care about now is keeping my boy safe. Cole looked at her, seeing the grit underneath all that weariness. She was like one of the wild mustangs from the high country, skittish and ready to run, but fiercely loyal if you could earn her trust. You can stay here, he said, for as long as you need. Mabel can always use an extra hand. Evelyn just stared at him. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a safe place to land. If you want to work for your keep, that's fine. If not, the offer still stands. Why? She asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. You don't even know me. Are you lying to me? No. Then that's all I need to know. Evelyn just shook her head, searching his face for a trick. She must not have found one, because her shoulders slumped with relief. I accept, she said, and I'll work. I won't be a charity case. Never thought you would be. Just then, Mabel came in with a basket of eggs, complaining about the cold making the hens stubborn. She saw Evelyn, and her face softened. Well, it's about time you joined the living, she said. I was starting to think you'd taken root in that bed. I was thanking Cole, Evelyn explained. Good, Mabel said, grabbing a skillet. Now you can thank him by eating a real breakfast. And so, Evelyn stayed. Life on the ranch settled into a new kind of normal. Evelyn took over the kitchen, insisting on earning her keep. She learned how Cole liked his coffee and which of Mabel's recipes were not to be tampered with. Samuel's cries became another sound of the ranch, like the wind or the lowing of cattle. Cole found himself changing too. He started coming inside for lunch. He found himself listening for the baby in the night. He watched Evelyn as the haunted look slowly left her eyes. She started to smile, little smiles at first. Then one afternoon she laughed at something Mabel said. It was a real warm sound, and Cole realized he'd been waiting to hear it. But he could still see the fear hiding just behind her eyes. You could see the fear in her plain as day. It was in how she'd jump at the sound of horses on the road and how she kept little Samuel glued to her hip. Sometimes she'd just stand by the window, staring out at the snow like she was expecting the devil himself to ride over the horizon. Well, about 3 weeks after the blizzard, he just about did. Cole was in the barn with a lame mare when he heard riders in the yard. 2 men were getting off their horses. One was a big, heavy fella with a thick beard. The other was lean and sharp, with eyes as cold as a winter creek. They were dressed in fine coats, looking like they owned the whole world, and it rubbed Cole the wrong way, something fierce. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Cole asked, keeping his voice even. The big man looked him over with pure scorn. "We're searching for a woman," he said. "Young, dark hair. She was heavy with child last we saw her. Calls herself Evelyn Hart, but she's got no claim to that name." Cole felt a chill run right through him. "What's your business with her?" he asked. "Family business," the sharp one cut in, his voice all clipped and proud. "She took property that wasn't hers and ran off. We're here to get it back." "Took property?" Cole said, real slow. "Is that what you call it?" "We call it stealing when folks take what they ain't earned," the big man James Hart shot back. Cole put the pieces together. "We have it on good authority she came through here during the storm. If you're hiding her, you're breaking the law." "Funny thing about the law out here," Cole said, his voice getting low and quiet. "It tends to protect a man's right to say who sets foot on his land." and I haven't seen anybody who fits that description." It was a half-truth, but letting it slide was a whole lot better than handing her over to these fellas. "You're lying," James Hart snarled. "Are you calling me a liar on my own land? I'm saying you ought to cooperate. My brother and I are patient, but not that patient." Cole stepped in close, using his height and broad shoulders to show them exactly what they were facing. "So is mine," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "And you're all out of it. Get off my property." The sharp-faced brother reached for his coat, and Cole's hand drifted down to the revolver on his hip. The move was slow and easy, but the meaning was crystal clear. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Cole warned. The air got thick enough to cut with a knife. Then James Hart gave a cold smile that never touched his eyes. "We'll be back," he promised. "With the sheriff. You'll regret this." "I'll take my chances." The Hart brothers swung up on their horses and left. James turned back one last time. "Tell her we're coming," he yelled. "There's nowhere she can run." Cole watched them ride off, his jaw set hard. He went back to the house, his mind churning. He found Evelyn in the kitchen holding Samuel, her face white as a sheet. She'd seen them. "They're coming back for him," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They'll take Samuel." "Hey," Cole said, crossing the room to put his hands on her shoulders. "Look at me. They're not taking a single thing from this ranch. Not you and not that boy, you hear me? You can't stop them," she cried. "They have money and power. And I've got a rifle and 20 years of not backing down from bullies like them," he said, his voice solid as an old oak. "We'll handle this, but I need you to trust me." She just looked at him, tears running down her cheeks. "Why?" she asked, her voice full of desperation. "Why are you doing all this?" Cole didn't rightly have an answer. He couldn't explain how saving her had gotten tangled up with saving a part of himself, or how the thought of those men taking Samuel made him see red. So he just said, "Because it's the right thing to do, and I'm not about to let them win." In that moment, something quiet and strong passed between them. It wasn't love, not yet. It was the start of a promise, one that would be tested by cruelty and injustice. 2 days later, the sheriff showed up with the Hart brothers and a piece of paper. Cole met them at the fence line, his rifle held easy in his arm. Sheriff Douglas Warren was a big man gone to seed, and he couldn't quite look Cole in the eye. He held up the paper like a shield. "Got a warrant here, Cole. Says I can search your land for a woman wanted for theft." "Theft of what exactly?" Cole asked. James Hart shoved forward, his face flushed with anger. "A silver locket, 2 dresses, and a quilt, all belonging to the Hart family." "That's a funny way of saying you threw a woman out into a blizzard while she was in labor," Cole said flatly. "We asked her to leave," the other brother said, his voice like ice. "What she did after that was on her." Cole looked straight at the sheriff. "You buying this nonsense, Doug?" The sheriff shifted his weight. "Doesn't matter what I believe. Judge Morrison signed it." "Then go on and do your job," Cole said. "But you're not taking anyone off this ranch, especially not a new mother and her baby." The sheriff looked almost glad for the out. "Fair enough." They all rode up to the house. Mabel met them at the door, her face a thundercloud. Behind her, Evelyn stood holding Samuel, her eyes wide with fear. "Sheriff," Mabel said, "you'll search this house over my dead body." "Mabel," Cole said, his voice firm but calm, "let them in. They won't find what they're looking for." Mabel stepped back, looking mad enough to spit. The men tromped in, tracking snow all over the clean floors, and started a search that was all for show. They looked through the guest room and the cellar, making a mess of things. Kitchen and the barn. They were hunting for stolen goods that everybody knew did not exist. As they ransacked the place, Evelyn stood frozen in the parlor. She held little Samuel to her chest, as still as a field mouse cornered by coyotes. Cole stood right between her and the Hart brothers, a solid wall they would have to get through to touch her. James Hart finally came to a stop in front of Evelyn, eyeing her with a cold, mean look. "Well, look at you," he said. "You're doing a sight better than you were that night." He let out a humorless smile. "What was it you said? That you were dying? That we were killing you? Seems to me you pulled through just fine." "No, thanks to you," Evelyn shot back. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were pure fire. "We offered you a place, some charity, till the baby came. But you had to start making claims on things that ain't yours," James said, nodding toward Samuel. "That child is heart blood. He ought to be raised in a good home, not by some woman with no money and loose morals." A wire snapped inside Cole. He took a step forward, getting right in James Hart's face. The man had to crane his neck back to look him in the eye. "You say one more word about her," Cole said, his voice dangerously low, "and I'll send you clean through that window. Warrant or no warrant." The sheriff stepped between them with his hands up. "All right now, that's enough. We've looked over the property and there's nothing here. The warrant is served. We're leaving." "Not without what we came for," the other Hart brother piped up. "She's here. She admitted it." "Admitted what?" Mabel's voice cut through the tension like a fresh sharpened knife. "That you can drag a mother and her 3-week-old baby out in the cold over some story you cooked up? Over things you can't even prove were real?" She turned her glare on the sheriff. "Doug Warren, I've known you since you were in knee breeches. Your own mama would be ashamed of you right now." Warren's face turned a deeper shade of red. "I'm just doing my job, Mabel. Your job is to see justice done, not to be a lapdog for rich fellas who can't take no for an answer." Mabel folded her arms. "Now, unless you're fixing to arrest all of us, I suggest you take these two and get off this property." The sheriff glanced at Cole, then at Evelyn, and finally at the Harts. Something he saw there made up his mind. "We're done here," he said firmly. "Let's go." James Hart didn't budge. "This ain't over. We have a right to that boy. Thomas was our blood." "And that boy," Cole cut in, "has a mother who nearly died to bring him here. She has a roof over her head and my name to protect her. If you want to fight that, you go right ahead. But you'll do it through the courts, not by showing up here and making threats. We'll see what a judge says about you harboring a fugitive." "I'm harboring an employee," Cole stated plainly. "A woman who works for her room and board. You got a problem with that, you can take it to a lawyer." Cole's voice turned to ice. "But you set foot on my land again without an invite, and the law will be the last thing you have to worry about." The Hart brothers left, but their threats lingered in the air like bitter smoke. The sheriff waited at the door, twisting his hat in his hands. He looked a decade older than he had that morning. "They won't let this go," Warren said quietly. "In this county, the Harts always get what they want." "Well, maybe it's high time that changed," Cole replied. Warren just shook his head. "You're a good man, Cole, but you're picking a fight you can't win. They've got the money and the lawyers. What do you have? The truth. The truth don't mean much when the judge is their cousin." The sheriff put his hat on and stepped outside. "You watch your back, and you watch hers. This is just the start." After the door closed, Evelyn sank onto the sofa, shaking all over. Samuel, who had started wailing during the argument, was still crying his little heart out. Mabel gently took the baby from her arms. She murmured soft words and carried him to the kitchen to warm a bottle. Cole sat down near Evelyn, keeping his distance. He was not sure how to offer comfort when he was still fighting his own rage. "Are you all right?" "No." The word was a shattered whisper. "They're going to take him. They'll find some way to take my Samuel, and I can't do a thing to stop them." "There are things we can do." "We?" Evelyn looked at him, her eyes red and swollen. "This isn't your fight, Cole. You've done too much already. But they're right. They have all the power and all the money. I'm just a woman with no one to stand for her. How can I possibly fight them?" Cole was quiet for a long moment. An idea had been taking shape in his mind. ever since the Harts had first arrived. It was a crazy idea and a complicated one, but it might be the only thing that could truly protect them. "There is one way," he said slowly. "A legal way they couldn't argue with." "What way is that?" "Marry me." The words hung in the air between them, feeling powerful and strange. Evelyn just stared at him, her mouth agape, as if he had suddenly started speaking a foreign language. "Marry you?" she finally whispered. "You want me to marry you?" "It's not about want," Cole said, turning to face her. His voice was steady, practical. "It's a solution. If you're my wife, you're protected by law. The Harts can't get to you or Samuel without coming through me first, and they can't make a claim on a boy being raised in my house under my name. That's insane. Maybe, but it would work." Evelyn shook her head and stood up, pacing the floor. "You don't even know me. We've hardly said 10 words to each other that weren't about ranch work. And you want to tie yourself to all my troubles for life?" "I want to make sure you and Samuel are safe," he said simply. "This is how I can do that. By giving up your own future? By taking on a wife and a child you never asked for?" Evelyn's voice was rising with panic. "What about what you want? What about a real family with someone you love?" "I'm 38 years old," Cole said quietly. "If I was going to find someone, I reckon I would have by now. This ranch is my life. It's enough. Nobody can live on just enough. That's my choice to make." Cole stood and walked toward her. "Listen to me. This can be whatever we need it to be. We would be married on paper. That's all. How we live day to day, well, we can figure that out as we go. No strings, no expectations. Just protection for you and the boy." Evelyn wrapped her arms around her waist. She looked so young and lost. "Why would you do this for us? For people you barely know?" "Because the night I found you, you became my responsibility. And I don't walk away from my responsibilities." Cole paused, his voice softening. "And because it would be wrong to let the Harts take that boy. I can't just stand by and let that happen." Tears finally slipped down Evelyn's cheeks. "You are a good man, Cole Riker. You deserve a whole lot better than what life has dealt you, but this is what I can offer." Evelyn was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was just a whisper. "If we do this, I need you to know something. I did care for Thomas, but it wasn't love. It was a bargain for survival. He was kind when I had nowhere else to turn, but I won't pretend it was more than that. I'm not asking you to pretend. And I won't lie to you," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "We do this, we do it with our eyes wide open, no illusions." "Agreed." Evelyn took a deep, shaky breath. "Then yes, I'll marry you. My son deserves a chance to live without fear." She met his gaze, her own look fierce through the tears. "And I swear to you, Cole, I will work hard. I will pull my own weight. I will be a good wife in every way that counts. You will never be sorry." "I know," Cole said, and he knew it was the truth. They were married 3 days later, right there in the parlor. Mabel stood as their witness, and a traveling preacher on his way to the mining camp spoke the words. There were no flowers or fancy clothes, just vows spoken over a Bible and 2 names signed on a piece of paper that would stand up in any court. Evelyn wore a borrowed dress, and Samuel slept right through it all. Cole stood tall in his cleanest shirt, feeling as though he was planting a fence post that would hold for 100 years. It was like watching a play. When the preacher said to kiss the bride, Cole hesitated for a second, but Evelyn stood on her toes and gave him a quick, thankful peck on the cheek. And that was that. "Well, I'll be," Mabel said once the preacher was gone. "Strangest wedding I've ever seen, but congratulations, I suppose." Cole just shrugged. "Desperate times, I reckon." That night, Cole moved his things into the spare room. He insisted Evelyn and the baby take the main bedroom. It felt right, giving them a proper place to start, a solid foundation. The Hart brothers came back a week later with a slick city lawyer this time. Cole met them on the porch. Evelyn stood right behind him, that simple gold wedding band on her finger, plain as day. "Mrs. Riker," James Hart said, his voice slick with fake politeness. "How nice to see you." "That's Mrs. Riker to you," Cole said, his own voice flat as a skillet. "She's my wife, and she's under my name and my protection." The lawyer stepped up, all business. "We are prepared to challenge the validity of this marriage. It is clearly a scheme to rob my clients of their legal nephew." "He is my son," Evelyn said, her voice shaking but strong. "I carried him. I brought him into this world. They have no right to him." "Thomas Hart was the father," the lawyer shot back. "That makes the boy a Hart heir. Your little wedding changes nothing." "Actually," Cole said, pulling a folded paper from his shirt pocket, "it changes everything. This here is an adoption document, signed, witnessed, and legal. It makes Samuel my son in the eyes of the law. The Harts have no more claim on him than any other stranger in this county." James Hart's face turned the color of a bad bruise. "You can't do this. You can't just steal our family legacy." "I'm not stealing a thing." Cole's voice was cold as a winter morning. "I am protecting my family. Now get off my property." The lawyer started to talk, but Hart cut him off. "This ain't over," he snarled. "We'll drag you through every court there is. We'll prove this is all a sham, and we will take that boy." "You go on and try," Cole said. "But while you're wasting your money, Samuel will be right here, growing up safe and loved. And every day that passes, he's putting down roots here, becoming more my son and less yours." In the weeks that followed, a funny thing started to happen. The marriage of convenience began to feel real. Cole and Evelyn found a rhythm, like partners who had been working together for years. She learned he took his coffee black, and he learned to give her space when the baby got fussy. They started talking, really talking. She told him about growing up rough in Nebraska, and he told her about the hard years building the ranch from nothing. Without even trying, they were building something together. Mabel watched it all with a small, knowing smile. Little Samuel was changing every day. His eyes turned a deep brown, just like his mother's. Cole found himself drawn to the boy more and more. He would sit and watch Evelyn rock him for hours. Sometimes he would hold Samuel himself when she needed a rest. One evening, the baby fell sound asleep on his chest, trusting him completely. In that moment, Cole knew the adoption paper was more than just a legal trick. It was a promise. This was his son, in every way that mattered. But the Harts weren't done. They filed their lawsuit claiming fraud and demanding custody. Cole hired a lawyer of his own, a sharp woman from Denver named Catherine Pierce, who had a reputation for not backing down. "They're going to try and tear your lives apart," Catherine warned them. "They will dig into every corner of your past to prove this is all a lie." "Let them dig," Cole said. "They won't find a thing that isn't true." Evelyn lifted her chin. "I'll tell the truth," she said. "Let them make what they want of it." They had 2 months before the hearing, 2 months of lawyers poking and prying into their lives, but it was also 2 months of them truly becoming a family. In the quiet evenings with the snow falling outside, Cole realized something that scared him more than any court battle. He was falling in love with his wife. It was not some big, flashy romance. It was a quiet, steady thing that grew from watching her gentle strength. He could not tell her. Love was never part of their deal. But as the court date got closer, Cole knew he was in this for life, no matter what a judge decided. The night before the hearing, Cole found Evelyn staring out the bedroom window into the darkness. Samuel was fast asleep in his cradle, not knowing that tomorrow would decide his entire life. "Can't sleep," she whispered without turning around. "Every time I close my eyes, I see their faces. I see them taking him from me, and the law letting them do it." Her voice was tight with terror. "How am I supposed to sleep, knowing that tomorrow a stranger in a black robe gets to decide if I get to keep my own son?" Cole walked into the bedroom, keeping that careful space between them. It had been 2 months since they'd married. He spoke first. Catherine is good at her job. She figures we have a strong case." He paused. "She also said the truth doesn't always win the day." Evelyn finally turned around. The lamplight showed just how tired she was. She had dark circles under her eyes, and her hands were knotted at her waist. "What if it's not enough?" she asked. "What if the judge is in their pocket or just decides a rich family is better than a rancher and his wife of convenience?" "Then we appeal," Cole said. "We keep fighting." "Until what?" Her voice cracked. "Until we're broke? Until they find some loophole we don't know about? Cole, they have everything. All I've got is you, and I have no right to keep asking you to sacrifice for a fight we might not win." He crossed the room in 3 long strides. He put his hands on her shoulders and made her look him in the eye. "You are not asking," he said. "I am choosing. There is a difference." His voice was steady, the same calm tone he used on a spooked horse. "The day we got married, I made you a promise. That promise didn't have conditions. It is not about what is easy. It is about what is right." Tears finally streamed down Evelyn's face. "I'm so scared," she whispered. "I've never been this scared. Not even during the storm. Back then, I didn't know how much I had to lose." Without a second thought, Cole pulled her into a hug. She leaned against him, burying her face in his chest, and finally let go. Her whole body shook as she cried quietly. He just held her, saying nothing. There were no words to fix this. All he could give her was his solid presence, a promise that he was not letting go. When she finally quieted, she pulled back a little, wiping her eyes. "I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be strong." "You are strong," Cole said. "But even the strongest folks need to break now and then." He gently brushed a stray hair from her face. "Tomorrow," he said, "you will go in there and tell the truth. You tell them about Thomas, about the Hearts, about that night. You let them see who you are and what you have survived." He met her eyes. "And no matter what that judge says, you remember that Samuel has 2 parents who love him. They can't take that away from us." Evelyn looked at him, a mix of surprise and confusion on her face. "You really mean that, don't you, about loving him?" "I do," Cole said, his voice firm. "He is not yours, not by blood." "Blood does not make a man a father," Cole stated, his own voice rough with feeling. "Being there does, protecting him does. Choosing him every single day, that is what does it. That boy is mine, Evelyn, in every way that matters, and I will be damned if I let anybody take him from us." The word hung in the air. Us. Not just for legal reasons. It felt like they were a team, something real that was more than just a piece of paper. A small sound came from the cradle. Samuel was starting to fuss, letting them know he would be hungry soon. The moment was broken. Evelyn moved to take care of her son. Cole was left standing there, wondering if he had said too much, or maybe not nearly enough. He went back to his own room, but sleep did not come. He laid awake, thinking about courtrooms and all the ways the next day could go wrong. He thought about Evelyn's tears, and how right she felt in his arms. He thought about Samuel, and the powerful need to protect that little boy. Sometime in the dark hours before the sun came up, Cole made up his mind. If the court ruled against them, he would fight. But not with lawyers. He would take Evelyn and the baby and head for the mountains. They would find a cabin where the law could not reach them. They would start over. He would give up this ranch, everything he had built, to keep his family safe. The thought did not scare him. It felt like a simple, solid truth. He had found his line in the sand. He would not compromise no matter what it cost. And God help anyone who tried to make him cross it. They rode into town together in the wagon. The 3 of them were dressed in their Sunday best, looking just like what they were, a family. Evelyn wore a dark blue dress, her hair pinned up to make her look more settled. Samuel was bundled up tight against the cold. Cole wore the same suit he was married in. It felt stiff and wrong, but it looked proper. The courthouse was a big stone building in the middle of town. People were gathered on the steps, and they whispered as the Rikers walked by. Their eyes followed Evelyn with a mix of curiosity and judgment. Cole kept his hand on the small of her back. It was a clear sign to everyone that he stood with her. A quiet strength that told the world not to test them. Their lawyer, Catherine Pierce, met them in the hall, her face all business. The Harts are here with their whole legal crew. Judge Morrison is on the bench. Now, he's ruled for the Harts before, but the man follows the law to the letter. That helps us. Inside, the Hart brothers were already settled with their high-dollar lawyers, 3 men who looked like they'd never known a hard day's work. James Hart caught Cole's eye and gave a cold, sure smile, like the fight was already over. Judge Morrison came in, a stern-faced man with gray hair and eyes that kept his thoughts to himself. He got right to it. We are here to discuss the Hart brothers' petition to undo the adoption of Samuel Hart by Cole Riker and give them the boy. The Hart's lawyer, Mr. Blackwell, stood up. Your Honor, this is simple. The boy is a Hart by blood, the heir to the family name. Mr. Riker's adoption was a trick and his marriage was a sham, all cooked up to cheat my clients out of their own nephew. Judge Morrison raised an eyebrow. What proof do you have? The wedding happened just weeks after the woman showed up at his ranch. It was a business deal, plain and simple, meant to use a legal loophole. Catherine stood. Your Honor, when they got married is not the issue. The marriage is legal and binding. We have the signed certificate to prove it. Blackwell scoffed. The consent was a lie. She played on Mr. Riker's good nature to get what she wanted. That is not true. Evelyn's voice cut through the room. The judge looked straight at her. You will have your turn, ma'am. For now, I want to hear from Mr. Riker. Cole walked to the stand and put his hand on the Bible. He told his story plain and simple. He found Evelyn in the snowstorm, helped deliver Samuel, and brought them home. He offered marriage when the Harts showed up making trouble. And why offer marriage? Catherine asked. I knew they would not stop, Cole said, looking at the judge. I saw what kind of men they were, tossing a pregnant woman into a blizzard and then lying about it. I was not going to let them bully a mother and take her child. So it was pity? Blackwell sneered. I married her to protect her, Cole said. That is different. Did you love her? The question was a trap. I respected her, Cole said, choosing his words. I saw her strength. Love is not always a lightning strike. Sometimes it is a choice you make every day. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Riker, I am asking you, is this a real marriage or is it for show? It is real, Cole said without a pause. It may have started different, but Evelyn is my wife. And Samuel is my son. I will stand by that until my last day, no matter what you decide here. The judge's expression shifted just a little. You can step down. Now it was Evelyn's turn. She told the story of her first husband's death and how his family treated her afterward. His mother said I had no rights. She took everything that was mine and made me work like a servant just for food and a bed. When the baby was coming, she had her sons throw me out. Into a blizzard, Catherine added, while you were about to give birth. Yes. Blackwell jumped up. This is just a story to make us feel sorry for her. We have no proof. You have my word, Evelyn said, her voice strong. And you have Cole, who found me nearly dead in the snow. What more proof do you need? The judge silenced the room. After more arguments, he called for a break. In the hallway, Cole found Evelyn holding Samuel by a window. You did real good in there, he said. I don't know, she whispered. I can't figure that judge out at all. He is a tough one, Cole agreed. But he listened to you. I saw it. Evelyn turned to him, her eyes searching his. What you said in there about love being a choice, she asked. Did you mean it? This was not the place, but there might never be a right place. Yes. And have you, she whispered, have you made that choice? He had just sworn to tell the truth. I have, he said softly. Tears welled in her eyes, but just then Catherine came back. They are ready for us. The judge has decided. The walk back to their seats felt like a mile. Evelyn found his hand and squeezed. Cole held on tight. Judge Morrison looked over the quiet room. I have looked at all the facts. On one side there is blood relation. On the other there is a mother's right and proof that she was treated with a cruel neglect. The law, however, is very clear. First, the marriage is legal and valid. Second, the adoption was done correctly, making Mr. Riker the boy's legal father. And third, how the Hart family treated this woman was wrong. Throwing a woman out in a blizzard while she is in labor is close to attempted murder. James Hart leaped from his chair. That is a lie, Your Honor. Sit down, Mr. Hart, the judge's voice snapped. I am not done. The petition is denied. The judge's voice was clear. Custody is denied. Samuel Riker will stay with his legal parents, Cole and Evelyn Riker. Furthermore, I am ordering an investigation into the Hart household. The courtroom exploded with noise. The Hart brothers were shouting at their lawyers. But Cole did not hear any of it. He only heard Evelyn's gasp of relief. He felt her lean against him as all the fear finally drained away. It's over, he whispered into her hair. They can't touch him now. But as he said it, he saw James Hart's face. He saw the cold anger there and knew this was not really finished. Men like the Harts did not take losing well. They would find another way. For now, though, it did not matter. They had won. Samuel was theirs. The law had finally recognized what Cole already knew in his heart. This was his family. It was a family built out of desperation and choice, and something much deeper than blood. Leaving the courthouse, they were met with a mix of congratulations and cold looks. The town was split down the middle. Some folks saw them as heroes who stood up to bullies. Others saw them as troublemakers. Cole did not care one way or the other. He just wanted to get Evelyn and Samuel home. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. They were both too worn out to talk. Samuel slept, not knowing his whole future had just been decided. As the ranch came into view, Evelyn finally spoke. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything, for saving us, for marrying me, for choosing to fight for Samuel." Cole stopped the wagon in the yard and turned to her. "I need to tell you something," he said. "What I said in court about love being a choice, that was true. But it was not the whole truth." Evelyn held her breath. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I mean I did not just choose to love you. I mean I do love you. It is not because of our arrangement. It is because you have grit, and you refuse to break no matter how hard the world pushes. You make this ranch feel like a home, not just a place I work. And when I think about the future, I cannot picture it without you in it." Tears streamed down Evelyn's cheeks again. "Cole, you do not have to say these things." "I know I do not," he said. "But I needed you to know it. For me, this is real. Completely real." Evelyn gently placed Samuel in his basket. Then she turned back to Cole and took his face in her hands. "You impossible, wonderful man," she said. "Did you really think I had not noticed? That I have not been feeling the same way?" Cole's heart skipped a beat. "You what?" "I love you too, you stubborn rancher," she whispered. "I think I started falling for you the day you gave me your bedroom without a second thought, or the first time you held Samuel and looked at him like he was the most amazing thing you had ever seen. I realized you did not marry me in spite of my troubles. You married me because of them. Because you just could not stand to let injustice win." She kissed him before he could say another word. It was a kiss that was both gentle and strong, and full of promises for the future. When she pulled away, she was smiling through her tears. "I think it is time we stop pretending this is just an arrangement, don't you?" Cole laughed, a sound full of disbelief and pure joy. "Yes," he said. "Yes, I think we should." That night, for the first time since their wedding day, they shared the same room. They were not there because they had to be. They were there because they wanted to be. They had fought their way through hell and found something real on the other side, a real family and a real future. As spring finally thawed the land, something new started to grow between Cole and Evelyn, too. They were building a life together. The ranch burst with color as wildflowers bloomed and the cattle got fat on green grass. Cole worked from dawn till dusk, but now he came home to Evelyn's smile and the sound of Samuel's happy noises. It made all the hard work feel like it was for something important. A few weeks after the trial, Evelyn moved her things into his room. There was no big discussion about it. They just started learning each other's quiet habits. Cole found out she sang old hymns while she worked, her voice clear and sweet. Evelyn learned he read poetry by lamplight when he couldn't sleep. Little Samuel grew like a weed with his mother's dark eyes and a stubborn chin Cole saw in the mirror every morning. The baby would laugh whenever Cole tossed him in the air. "You're going to spoil him rotten," Evelyn would say, but she'd be smiling. "Better than teaching him to be scared," Cole would answer. And she'd get quiet, remembering things she was trying hard to forget. But the past wasn't done with them. About 6 weeks later, Sheriff Warren rode up to the ranch again, and the news he brought felt like a cold winter wind blowing right back into their lives. Drained from Evelyn's face. The Hart family farmhouse had burned to the ground 3 nights ago. James and William Hart had both been inside. Neither made it out. "Fire started in the kitchen," the sheriff said, holding his hat in the parlor. "It spread awful fast. By the time anyone saw the smoke, it was too late. Looked like they were trying to escape." Cole felt Evelyn's hand grab his, her grip tight enough to hurt. "Any idea how it started?" Cole asked. "Hard to say. Could have been an overturned lamp. Could have been an accident." Warren shifted his feet. "Or it could have been something else." "Something else?" Cole repeated, his voice low. "Are you saying someone set it?" "I'm saying," the sheriff said, looking Cole straight in the eye, "that some folks around here weren't too fond of the Harts. I am not investigating this as arson. Far as I'm concerned, the case is closed. Model? It was a terrible accident, nothing more." After Sheriff Warren drove off, Evelyn just stood at the window, hugging herself tight. Cole came up behind her, giving her space but staying close. She finally spoke, her voice quiet. "I ought to feel something. Sadness, maybe. They were Samuel's kin, after all, but all I feel is relief. Does that make me a bad person?" "No, ma'am, it makes you human." Cole put his hands on her shoulders, his touch steady and sure. "They tried to take your son from you. You do not owe them a single tear." Still, Evelyn turned to face him, looking to him for the truth. "I keep wondering if we somehow caused this. Not the fire, I know we did not do that. But by fighting them and winning, did we push someone else to do it? You cannot carry the weight of another man's choices, Evelyn. We fought them the right way with the law on our side. What happened after that is not on us. Do you really believe that?" "I do." Cole gently brushed a stray piece of hair from her face. "And I reckon the sheriff does too. He made it a point to tell us he was not investigating. That was his way of telling us to let it go. And I think we should." She rested her head on his chest. "I keep waiting for it all to fall apart again. When do we get to just be happy?" "Starting right now," Cole said, his voice firm. "The Harts are gone. The fight is over. There is nothing standing in our way. So let's start building our future." And they did. About 2 weeks later, a lawyer showed up all the way from Cheyenne. The papers he carried nearly took Evelyn's breath away. What was left of the Hart Ranch, after all the debts were paid, now belonged to Samuel. It was not a huge fortune, but it was 30 acres of good land, some cattle, and enough money to give them a real start. "They fought so hard to keep him from getting any of this," Evelyn whispered, looking at the papers. "And he ended up with it anyway." Cole looked over the land survey, his mind already turning. "This piece of property sits right against our southern pasture. If we join them, we would have enough land to double our herd. We could build something real." "Our herd?" Evelyn looked up at him, her voice soft. "You said our." "Well, it is. You are my partner in this ranch, just like you are my partner in everything else." Cole reached out and took her hand. "It is Samuel's inheritance, so the choice is yours." "What do you want to do?" Evelyn thought for a long moment. "I want to use it to build something good, something that honors the life Samuel should have had, but also the life he has now, with us." Her eyes were bright and full of purpose. "Let's join the properties. Let's build that future you talked about." And when Samuel is old enough, we will tell him the whole story." "That is a damn good plan," Cole said with a smile. They merged the ranches that summer. When it was all done, the Sunrise Ridge Ranch was no longer a small outfit. It was something solid, something permanent. Cole hired a couple of young fellas from town to help with the extra work. Evelyn put her heart into making the ranch a true home. She planted a big garden that fed them all winter with plenty left over to sell. She made curtains for the windows and rugs for the floors. She even talked Cole into building a proper front porch where they could sit in the evenings and watch the sun set over the mountains. Mabel watched it all, her sharp words softened by real affection. About time this place felt like a home. Instead of some bachelor's camp, she would say, but her eyes would be smiling. That fall, Samuel took his first wobbly steps right into Cole's arms. It was a perfect, everyday miracle. This little boy, born in a blizzard and fought over in court, was now walking and growing into his own person. "He will be running circles around us before you know it," Evelyn laughed. "Then we better enjoy these slow moments while they last," Cole answered. But life was not done changing. That winter, Evelyn found Cole in the barn. She waited for him to finish his lunch before she spoke, her hands clasped in front of her. "I am expecting," she said simply. "About 3 months along, I reckon." Cole just stared at her for a second before a wave of pure joy washed over him. "Are you sure?" "As sure as a woman can be." He crossed the barn in 2 long strides and swung her up in his arms, setting her down gently. "We are having a baby," he said, his voice full of wonder. "A baby that is ours right from the start." Tears welled up in Evelyn's eyes. "I was worried you might not want another one so soon." "Are you kidding me? This is the best news in the world." Cole held her face in his hands. "You have given me everything, Evelyn. Another child is not a burden. It is a blessing." Their daughter was born in the late spring. The town doctor delivered her right in their own bed, with Mabel helping, and Cole wearing a path in the hallway floor. When he was finally called in, Evelyn was tired but glowing, holding a tiny baby with a full head of dark hair. "Meet your daughter," Evelyn whispered. "I thought maybe we could name her Rose after your mother." Cole felt his throat tighten. His mother had passed when he was just 15. He had not said her name out loud in years, but looking at this new life, he felt the old pain make room for hope. "Rose," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Rose Riker. My mama would have loved that." Samuel was taken with his new sister, always toddling over to her cradle to stare. "Baby," he would say with pride. The ranch grew and prospered. Cole's smart management and the extra land meant their herd was soon the envy of the whole county. They faced down droughts and hard winters, but they did it together. Evelyn had a sharp mind for numbers and took over the ranch's books, showing a steady profit year after year. They added on to the house as their family grew. More than just a successful ranch, it became a place folks pointed to as proof that a person could build a good life out of a hard start. The story of how Cole found Evelyn and Samuel in the snowstorm became a local legend. Samuel grew into a quiet, capable boy with his father's touch with horses. Rose was fierce and funny like her mother. 2 more children came along, a boy named Thomas after Evelyn's first husband and a daughter, Margaret, named for Mabel, who cried when they told her. The years rolled by, each one building on the last. The foundation they built together was strong, made of hard work, respect, and a love that had been tested by fire and ice. They had found their peace not by forgetting the past, but by using it to build a better future on the land they called home. Learning everything her brother did, refusing to be left behind just for being a girl. Thomas was the quiet one, more at home with books, but he had a feel for the land that would be the ranch's salvation. And little Margaret, well, she already had her grandma Mabel's sharp wit. For their 10th anniversary, Cole treated Evelyn to a special dinner at the hotel in town. He left the children with Mabel for a night that felt borrowed from another life. They put on their Sunday best and sat at a little table lit by candlelight, feeling more like a young man and woman than parents for a few hours. "Do you ever have second thoughts?" Evelyn asked him quietly over dessert. "About taking on a pregnant woman and all the trouble that followed her?" Cole reached out and took her hand, a simple gesture he had made 1,000 times before. but it always meant the world. Not once, not for a single heartbeat, especially not when things were tough and the whole county was whispering about us. That's when I truly saw what you were made of, what we were made of. A smile softened the hard lines on his face. You gave me a family, Evelyn. You gave me 4 beautiful children and a reason to build something that will last. But more than anything, you gave me your heart, your strength, your partnership. How could I ever regret the single best choice I ever made? Evelyn's eyes started to water. I was so scared back then. Scared in the storm, scared of losing Samuel, scared to even hope for something good. Every time I had hoped before, it was torn away from me. But you never blinked. You just kept choosing me, choosing us, until I finally believed we were worth being chosen. You always were, he said softly. I just helped you see it yourself. They walked home under the clear spring sky, hand in hand, talking about nothing and everything. They spoke of Samuel's newfound passion for horse breeding, and Rose's stubborn demand to learn to shoot. They talked about Thomas's project to name every plant on the ranch and Margaret's constant arguments for a new puppy. They dreamed about the ranch's future, and all the tomorrows they would build right here. When they got to the house, Cole pulled Evelyn into his arms before they went inside. The sky was filled with stars, and a lone coyote called out from the darkness. It was the same piece of land where he had heard her desperate screams in a blizzard 10 years earlier, but now it felt like a whole new world. I love you, he said, his voice low and certain. Just in case I don't say it enough. Oh, you say it 100 different ways every single day, she whispered, rising up to kiss him. But I never, ever get tired of hearing it. Inside the house, Mabel had already put the 2 younger children to bed. But Samuel and Rose were still up, deep in concentration, building a magnificent fort out of wooden blocks right in the middle of the parlor. Why it had to be that exact size and shape. Cole only half listened, the other part of him just soaking in the sight of his family. His children were healthy, happy, and safe. His wife, Evelyn, looked lovely in the lamplight, laughing at a joke Samuel told. This was his life, built from hard times, tough choices, and a love that started as a tiny ember and grew to warm everything around it. Years on, Samuel was a grown man running the ranch right alongside his father. Rose had married the fella from the next ranch over and was raising a family of her own. Thomas went back east to study farming and brought home new ways of doing things that changed everything. And Margaret, well, she became the town's first woman lawyer, fighting for folks who needed a voice. With all this settled, Evelyn finally sat down to write their story. She was in her 60s then, her dark hair shot through with gray, and her hands telling the story of decades of hard work. But her mind was still sharp, and she knew she had to get it all on paper before the memories started to fade. She wrote about that terrible blizzard, the tiny line cabin, and the man who heard her yelling and chose not to ride on by. She wrote about the court battles, the constant fear, and the times it felt like everything was about to fall apart. She wrote about how her love for her husband came on slowly, like a spring thaw, until one day she realized she could not picture a life without him in it. But the heart of the story was about the children, about Samuel, born in the middle of a storm, who grew into a man of quiet strength. She wrote about Rose, Thomas, Margaret, and the 2 that followed. Each one of them was a different piece of the love that held their family together. She wrote about the ranch, how it went from a safe harbor to a legacy that would last for generations. It was the story of how a woman left to die found a new beginning. How a man who figured he was too set in his ways for a family learned he was just waiting for the right one. How love does not always show up with a lot of noise and fanfare. Sometimes it is just a stranger who decides to stop when anyone else would have kept going. On the very last page, Evelyn wrote this. People say love is like a lightning strike, a flash of magic that changes your whole world in a second. But that is not the whole story. Sometimes love is a man hearing a scream in a storm and deciding to check on it when it would be safer to head for home. Sometimes it is a woman putting her trust in a stranger because she has no one else to turn to. And sometimes It is two people agreeing to be partners long before they are ready to be lovers, and finding out that being partners is its own special kind of love. Our story did not start with romance. It started with just trying to stay alive. But staying alive turned into looking out for each other. Looking out for each other turned into a partnership. That partnership grew into love. And that love became everything. Our children, this ranch, our entire life. All of it grew from that one moment Cole Riker heard me scream and chose to help. So if you are reading this years from now, one of our grandkids or great-grandkids wondering about your roots, here is your answer. You came from a choice. You came from kindness standing up to cruelty, from a love that was built one day at a time until it was strong enough to face anything. You came from a blizzard and a good man who refused to let it win. I cannot imagine a better legacy than that. Evelyn put down her pen and gazed out the window at the ranch spread out below. This land was her home, her life built from absolutely nothing. Cole was out in the south pasture with Samuel and Thomas, checking the fence lines before the first freeze. Rose was in the barn with her own little ones, teaching them to ride just like their granddaddy taught her. Margaret was in town, likely arguing with a judge about a woman's right to vote or own property. The house was filled with the happy noise that only a big, loving family can make. It was more than Evelyn had ever dreamed of during those dark days with the Hearts. It was everything she thought she had lost forever that night. They threw her out into the storm. But she had not lost it. She had found it right here with a man who proved that being a hero was not about fancy gestures. It was about showing up. It was about doing the right thing when doing nothing would have been a whole lot easier. It was about choosing love, day after day, until that choice became the foundation of your entire life. When Cole came in that evening, tired and covered in dust, he found Evelyn in the study with the pages spread out. He read over her shoulder without a word, then leaned down and kissed the top of her head. "You told it true," he said softly. "Did I?" she asked. "Every last word," he said, pulling up a chair next to her. "Although you might have mentioned how stubborn you were about letting me help you back then." Evelyn laughed. "And you could have mentioned how you burned dinner 3 nights in a row trying to prove you did not need Mabel's help in the kitchen. We were both stubborn. We still are." Cole took her hand, his thumb gently rubbing the gold ring she had worn for over 30 years. "But we were stubborn together," he said, "and that made all the difference." They sat there quietly as the sun went down and the house settled in for the night around them. Upstairs, their grandkids were being tucked into bed. Outside the windows, the ranch they had built together was alive and breathing. In that quiet moment, holding hands with their story finally told, Cole and Evelyn Riker knew something you cannot write in a book. The best lives are not the ones that have perfect beginnings. They are the ones where folks refuse to let a rough start decide how the story ends. They had both been thrown into a storm, each in their own way. But instead of letting it break them, they had made something stronger in its place. A love that had seen them through courtrooms and cruelty, through lean times and good times, through sorrow and joy. A love that started with a scream in the darkness and a man who answered the call. And that was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.